This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to replace professional medical advice or be a substitute for therapy. Please contact a mental health professional as needed. If you are in need of urgent or emergency health care, please contact your medical and/or mental health provider, call 911, or go to your nearest emergency room. The information presented in this podcast does not reflect the opinions of those with whom Dr. Ellick might be affiliated as an employee, consultant, or colleague, past or present. Hello, and welcome to another episode of From Mayhem to Mindset with Dr. Laura. I am your host, Dr. Laura Ellick. I am so excited about my guest today, my guest, Blake Cohen. We had a conversation via Zoom just when we were talking about Blake being on the podcast. And I have to say, this was probably one of the most fun conversations that I've had. And that's actually Blake's platform. So I'm going to read a little bit about him because this guy is absolutely amazing, and then we'll get into it. So I am a mission-driven professional specializing in leadership and organizational psychology, dedicated to enhancing workplace dynamics by fostering connection, purpose, productivity, and engagement. I am currently in the process of completing my doctorate in leadership and organizational psychology at William James College and possess a master's degree in leadership as well as a bachelor's degree in psychology. Previously, I was a successful entrepreneur, counselor, and coach in the mental health care sector, and I now concentrate my diverse experience on executive coaching, workplace training, corporate speaking engagements, and organizational consulting. Additionally, I am a best-selling author, an international keynote speaker, and the host of the Workplace Wanderer podcast. Wanderer. Sorry. Oh my gosh, Wanderer. I am blind. I advocate for human connection, a sense of belonging, and healthy interactions in all environments. Residing in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, I take pleasure in spending quality time with my wife and our dog, Boone. So when do you sleep?
I just literally was thinking that I'm exhausted after hearing that bio.
Right?
But I do want to say something that you said, fun is my platform. And I just had an epiphany or realization moment of how cool is it that I get to be the fun person, that I get to go into workplaces and bring them fun. And that's either a great thing or I've become a corporate clown. But either way, I'm very happy to be introduced like that.
So I think it's just so amazing because first of all, you started in the addiction industry, which, you know, let's be honest, it's not a fun industry. There's no fun going on there, right? So like, was it working in that particular industry that got you sort of like this idea percolating? Like, how did it even start?
Well, I think a lot of things can be true at once, right? So I landed in working in the addiction space, knowing that I wanted to work in mental health at some point, and then went through my own struggles. And I think like many people who find recovery, who are interested in helping others, they just say, okay, well, I want to work for a treatment center and give back to people who are still struggling. So while working in that industry, a number of things happened as I was going through it, a lot of positive stuff. Was pushed into a lot of different leadership roles, worked for a couple different companies, and there were some experiences that showed me the effects that a leader can have on the organization and how just simple changes in leadership or a swapping of roles can affect the entire system. And that should have upset me because I ended up leaving a job that I thought I was going to be at forever because of that. But instead, it kind of intrigued me. And as I was going to start my own company in that field, I also decided to go back to school to get a master's degree in leadership, wanting to understand what is it about leaders? What are the principles that creates a great leader? And I was very interested in the dark side of leadership too. What are the things a leader can do wrong that could really affect people's
I've seen that.
Productivity, happiness. Yeah, I think we all have. And so I was so curious about that topic after reading a few books and going back to school. And then I had started my own company with a partner. Shout out to her. We had a great 4-year run, but I kind of felt like I had a mistress and I was cheating on the industry with this other field of organizational psychology. I just fell in love with it.
So that's really like, that became your passion.
Yes.
The more you learned and the more you studied it. Very similar to family dynamics, right? When you're trying to change a system, sometimes there is resistance in the members of the system, right?
So part of my main focus in working in the treatment industry was working with families. And I think I subconsciously made that correlation and saw that connection. And the reality is now is if I can work with families to help bring them back together after having going through such deep emotional struggles, I can work with companies to bring them back together and to create and improve those interpersonal relationships at work so that they're more productive and happier as they do their work.
So what happens though if leadership doesn't recognize that there is an issue? Because look, there are the leaders who are up here.
Yeah.
Then there are the people who are on the floor or whatever you want to call it, who boots on the ground,
Yeah.
who are doing the work, and there's often that disconnect. And so how would you approach that?
I would say that most of the time leaders are unaware of how their behavior is affecting the people underneath them. It does take a very courageous leader to get feedback from the people below them. But going through that process of getting feedback from the people that work with you is going to be very enlightening, and it's going to help you become a better leader. I think there's a difference between being a CEO or owning a company and being a leader.
Yes.
And if you want to make that transition and you want to be a true leader with a vision and that is motivating and inspiring and all of those other great things that we know about leaders, you have to take time to grow and become a better leader. And you should be seeking constant feedback from the people you work with. One piece that I see all the time, and honestly, a piece that's been transformative for me is that as I'm going through this doctoral program, we are constantly challenged with getting feedback from our peers. And we are constantly taking hard looks at ourselves. And it's not fun. It's hard. And you see things about you that you don't like. And you're also getting feedback about how other people see you. The good, the
That's
bad,
scary.
the ugly. It's scary as hell. But coming out on the other side of that, the confidence that I feel and the growth that I've had because of that, it's made me so much aware of myself and how I'm perceived in this world that I feel so much more effective now if I were to be put into a leadership role or to guide companies towards their own growth.
One of the things, and we were talking about this before, before the cameras were rolling, is, in the mental health industry, there are a lot of people who are running companies in administrative supervisory roles who are therapists and theoretically should have those skills, but they don't seem to translate. Like my brother's in the corporate world and I'm in the mental health field, right? Sure. So when I talk to my brother about some of the policies and procedures and the way things are done in places where I've been, my brother's like, that would never fly in corporate America. Like, how are they running? And so what I'm curious about is, as therapists, we ask for feedback. Right? Like, we want to know.
You have a whole system, supervision built in for that.
How is this relationship going? You may check in with a client or whatever. I found that administrators don't do that.
Yeah. I think, and I will say, I think that there's a lot that the corporate world can learn from therapists.
Yes, and
a
vice
lot that
versa.
therapists can learn
Absolutely.
from the corporate world.
One of the things I like in the corporate world, though, is everything is clear cut. The expectations are very clear cut. I find that when therapists are in these roles, everything gets a little mushy. Well, it kind of depends on the circumstances, and that's confusing.
Right. Therapists need to learn when they're doing therapy and need to know when they're managing or leading. And they need to have some conviction when they are leading and managing. They have to be able to make decisions or at least include other people in that decision process and come up with clear answers. I think it's really common for the more you get educated, the more we say the words, it depends. And because we are recognizing that there is shades of gray in this world and that it's really hard to give one clear answer about anything because what is a right answer?
Right.
It's really hard. But it is a leader's role to take in as much information as they can and make the best educated decision that they possibly can. And I think that is something that therapists would really benefit from understanding as they step into administrative or leadership roles.
So how does someone get you on their site? Does the CEO actually call you? Like, who would call you and say, Blake, we need your help?
The CEO, the chief HR officer, HR brings me in, management, clinical director. Typically what starts for me is that they have me come in and do a workshop. And then based off the workshop, I always love to get feedback during the workshop. Hey, what's working here? Sometimes I'll send out a pre-assessment and a post-assessment, find out what's working, what do you think you can change, what would the company benefit from, and then I can make those suggestions in a report to whomever hired me. Oftentimes the issues are the same. It is that there is no clear direction. It's that people are being overworked, that there's no clear direction. They're not sure about growth in the company. So there's not a lot of clear targets or information for people who are working within the field. But the biggest issue really is that burnout, number one, is for clinicians. And then I would say number two is something called organizational trauma that is never discussed, where when you're working in the addiction treatment industry or mental health care, or healthcare in general, you are dealing with an inordinate amount of loss and trauma. And it's so normalized in that industry and very rarely discussed or processed through as staff. I remember working in the field, and at one point somebody had snuck in a substance and they ended up overdosing on our watch. And thankfully they were able to come back after 4 shots of Narcan, which was the scariest thing ever. I had the person's head in my lap and just praying that she comes back. And the next day I come in and I sit down with the clinical director, who was amazing, by the way. I just don't think was equipped to know how to deal with this. And I want to sit down and talk about this because I'm shaken by this experience. And it was just, well, this is what we deal with. We keep moving forward for the next person and we move on.
Oh, boy.
There's no processing of the trauma that we deal with. So that lives in our bodies and builds up over time as clinicians or as people who work in mental health care, whether you're tech staff or all the way to the top. And that has a long-term effect on us. So those are the two main issues. It's burnout and the organizational traumas that you see in mental health care that is very rarely discussed.
So I want to pivot to your platform because I love this. So you just did a TEDx talk, right, on fun in the workplace.
Yeah.
So tell me how you even came up with that idea. I think it's phenomenal.
Okay, so, well, first of all, I'll say that it's been a goal of mine for 6-7 years on my bucket list to do a TEDx talk. And so I've applied to so many and have been denied from each one. And what I recognized after a while, and almost did it again for this one, was that I kept applying with topics that I thought other people wanted to hear. And for this one, I finally said, I want to just talk about a topic that I think is important. And I've had a few people that have been leaders of mine or organizations and cultures that have embraced the concept of fun and laughter and play at work. And I still think back so fondly of those places. And we were so productive. It wasn't like we just spent all of our time goofing around. We goofed around and were very productive. And as a leader and as somebody who's then taken on ownership of companies and ran departments, it has kind of always been my approach to take a lighthearted, fun approach. And I've never had an issue with productivity with anybody on my team.
No, I mean, doesn't it improve everyone's mental health and it improves morale and all of those things which make people more productive?
Absolutely, yeah. So what ultimately I felt like gave me the permission for it was as I was in a neuroscience course, we were discussing David Rock's Healthy Mind Platter. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
So it's basically, how we have that pyramid, the food pyramid of what we're supposed to eat, which I think has been debunked, right?
Right, yeah.
But anyway, we've always kind of looked at that plate of what we're supposed to be eating. It's the same idea for our brain health and what makes us function at its best. And one of the 7 concepts on it is playfulness. So I just was intrigued by that and started going down this research thread and doing literature reviews and trying to understand what is it about playfulness that is so effective. And, I could ask you, if you were operating and running a team, what is it that you want from the team? Ultimately for your business?
Oh my gosh, I want everybody to be passionate about their work, but for us to all get along and enjoy each other. That makes the workplace, if you have to go to work, I would like to work with people who I enjoy hanging out with and collaborating with and exchanging ideas. That to me is the ideal.
And from a business stance, ultimately, why would you want that?
Because it's going to make, it's going to reduce retention. That attitude is going to be
Increase
passed on.
retention.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to, that's going to get passed down to the clients, to the customers, to whomever, that this is a great place. And I want to do business with this place too, because everybody looks happy.
100%. It affects your reputation. It affects engagement, which right now, as a nation, we are reporting some of the lowest levels of employee engagement ever. And
That's the quiet quitting thing, right?
It's the quiet quitting thing. That's going to work and not really feeling passionate about the work you do, not really caring about your job, and being willing to just say, I'm doing this for my resume, I'm moving on in a couple of years, I don't really care. And so if you can build a sense of community and belonging through laughter and playfulness at work, you can build a much more effective team that is very productive, engaged, collaborative, and creative and innovative.
Yes.
So there are so many areas that it's affected, and it's rooted in in neuroscience, it's rooted in social psych, organizational psych, adult development, all of these things. It's so good for us to be in a positive, playful environment. It brings out the best in us. So I was just fascinated by learning about all that, and I wanted to share that with the world. So what better platform than TEDx?
So what would you consider playfulness in the workplace? Because, people have to be careful now. I got to be honest. You have to be careful. You tell the wrong joke or you do something and then you're sitting in HR. So how do you define playfulness?
Yeah, I get this question a lot, and I understand it because it is complex. And I think our minds, I'll speak for myself. When I think about playfulness, I'm thinking about kids playing. When I'm thinking about humor, I'm thinking about razzing and joking and playing around with people and kind of ball busting a little bit. But you have to find what I call professional playfulness. And professional playfulness can look different for every culture. So I think the first thing I suggest to people is to look inwards and say, what is your version of play? What is your version of humor? And then how can you adapt it to be in a professional environment? And oftentimes the response I get when I discuss professional playfulness or fun at work, people immediately go to events or team building. And that's not what I'm talking about.
If I have to do one more icebreaker, I'm done. That is not fun.
Not what I'm talking about with this concept. So, and I think that's why a lot of people believe this concept is fluff. It's that, okay, so you're just telling me to go have a fun event, go bring everybody to a ropes course, or we're going to go to Boomers, or we're going to go do something that's playful, and then we all go back to our jobs and nothing changes. I'm talking about a cultural shift where we introduce micro moments of levity and humor and joy throughout each day. And so that can look like office decorations. It can look like rituals that your team has. I would suggest anybody who's listening right now, look up NASA and their Jet Propulsion Laboratory and the number of rituals they have as a team. They're just little fun things that they do that bring people together, that bring some micro moments of levity into their culture, but it helps them cope with the daily stress of their jobs.
So that's really interesting because I think of some places where I've been where I've brought in for the staff on my desk this big bucket of fidget toys and stress balls, and when we're having a conversation, toss his stress ball and be like, you need this, that kind of thing. But that has been discouraged. Why do companies view that if you are playful in the workplace, you can't be a serious workplace? What's the inconsistency with that? Because I think you can do both.
You can. Yeah. So I think it's just stigma. I think it's people like to take themselves and their organizations too seriously.
Right. Some people would look down on it and be like, oh, what's that?
Yeah. What's interesting, though, is that I don't get that response as much as you'd think. And so I've been fortunate enough after the TEDx to be able to present this topic on a much broader scale for an hour or an hour and a half to different HR companies, organizations, healthcare companies. I'm doing one for Mass General Brigham up in Boston soon. And you'd be surprised at how receptive people are to this. If they really take a moment to think about when their organization was operating at its best, it was when people were feeling lighthearted, when there was levity in their system, when they were happy, they were operating at their best. when they think about when they were operating at their worst, it was when they were in what I call serious wormholes, where they were just stuck, stressed out. All they could focus on was what was in front of them. Any other stimulus that comes into the system is overwhelming. They want to quit. They're imagining they're on a beach somewhere in Mexico, and they're thinking about escaping. I think people are, it's stigma and it's tradition that we go back on. And if I think about those organizations that feel like you have to walk in the door and be this serious person, we're thinking about organizations from 30, 40 years ago.
I was going to ask, do you think there's a generational difference? Because I'm just thinking about the people who responded most negatively to some of the things that I did, and they were boomers and older. Nothing against boomers, guys, but but there could be like just generational conflict in the workplace based on what your original training was or how you were taught work is work and we go and we do our job. And
yeah. Yeah, listen, I think I am speaking. I mean, and by the way, boomers have accepted this concept a lot more than you'd think.
Yay, okay. There's hope for my mom and dad.
Yeah. But I do think there is a bit of a generational divide there, and there's some struggles. And sometimes you have to really understand what your company's values and your culture is like to want to bring this concept into work. If I'm really thinking about what I'm talking about, it's humanizing your workplace. But there is so much science and data to back up these concepts that they are going to make your organization more productive, more engaged, more creative, more collaborative. There's so many benefits to this. And ultimately, when I say all that, I'm talking about it's going to make you more money as a company. But you do have to be willing to step out of your comfort zone. And I think that is the biggest pushback I've gotten, is that people are uncomfortable taking the time it takes to shift their culture. It requires consistency. It requires them to take deep, hard looks at themselves. And it requires them to change their own behavior towards something that they may not be so comfortable with, like smiling more at work or making jokes or having, when you're introducing a new concept or a new directive, using storytelling to support that directive.
And to keep people engaged.
Keep people engaged. That's really what this is all about. It's that understanding that humans are, as much as people want to resist it, you can bring all the systems you want into your job. Humans are emotional. They are motivated by their emotions, or they are demotivated by their emotions. There are chemicals in our brains that make us feel attached to something or want to run away from something. And we have to respect that every single human being is like that. So if we can build systems that respect the biology of a human being, we can create a much more effective and productive workforce.
I love that. I love that. I have another question that I'm going to get to after we take this quick break. Okay, so here's the big question. You obviously have looked at the research. This is your thing. What have you found that's most surprising to you, looking at this concept of playfulness and fun in the workplace?
What I've found that was the most surprising, I think, was how many organizations that we all know of tout and are very proud of a playful culture.
Okay.
Pixar, DreamWorks.
Okay, that makes sense. They're all creatives.
Yeah, well,
right?
Also, but Patagonia, NASA, Microsoft. The list goes on and on and on. I have a whole slide in my big presentation that I do for this that I call it a social proofing slide that I used to have at the end of the presentation. But I realized as I started to discuss the concept, people would check out because they think it's fluff. So I moved it to the beginning of it. And like, before we talk about this, I want you to know all of these massively successful companies tout and are very proud of a playful culture. So I think that's what surprised me the most. Also, some of the ways that healthcare organizations actually use this, and some of the stories that came out of Mass General, for example. There's this great story about this guy named Bob Carey and his wife was going through breast cancer treatment. So every time she would go to chemo, she would have a book with her, and she would open the book and there'd be another picture of her husband, Bob, who was an overweight man wearing nothing but a tutu.
Oh my gosh.
In different spots all over Boston. And over time, she started sharing it with the other patients receiving chemo at the same time. And it would just bring them so much joy Mass General picked up on this and ended up supporting this and creating something called the Tutu Project, which sent Bob Carey all over the place to take these pictures all over the world.
No
Japan,
way.
everywhere, all over the world. And ended up creating a book to raise money for breast cancer research. And it brought so much joy to people. It was rooted in levity and lightheartedness. And it was an effective way for people to come together with a purpose based on this whole concept that was embraced in a healthcare organization. And all of the employees that had anything to do with this felt so passionate about it and were so happy to come to work because they knew they were a part of something greater.
That's crazy. I just got a chill down my spine as you were saying that, because it actually shows something that started off as like a small little thing can have an impact on so many people.
Yeah.
Wound up fundraising, like really? Just from like a guy in a tutu.
So cool, right?
Yeah.
I think that's where, for leaders, it requires us to have emotional presence and to be emotionally and situationally aware of what's going on around us, and to look for opportunities to bring levity into serious moments. It doesn't mean making a joke of our work or making a joke of serious issues, but it means that we can deal with it with levity, and we can be a lot more effective if we do that. And it actually releases a lot of the stress that we're dealing with. I can ask you, and I bet anybody who's listening would agree, is have you ever been in a moment that is so overwhelming, so stressful, so sad, so angering, where you laughed?
Oh, yeah.
Right? We all have. And it's because it's built into our DNA almost as a pressure release valve to laugh when we're feeling so much overwhelm or so much stress. We can hack that system and we can laugh more to relieve stress before it gets to that point. So it's the same concept as that if I put a pencil in my mouth and it mimics a smile, that it releases endorphins in my brain. It's the same concept. We can combat stress and worry and overwhelm with laughter, with humor, with playfulness, which doesn't even have to do with laughter if you don't want it to be. It could be going for a walk around your building, or fidgeting with something, or playing a game with someone, or just using your imagination. We can relieve stress and prevent us from getting to that burnt out place, to that place of overwhelm. And by doing so, we become much more effective thinkers.
So when we're talking about some kinds of playfulness, this does not require a huge investment from the company, correct?
Very little.
It's it's not like people are going to be taken away from their work for hours at a time. Like the investments that we're talking about are relatively small given the potential for the benefits for the company and its employees.
Right. It's not a pizza party where you're going to have to spend a bunch of money on pizza. It's like I said, it's a cultural intervention. So it's more about our behavior and how we treat each other than it is about spending money on events or investing a ton of money into making a fun culture or creating like a Willy Wonka style office space where people can play like children, which would be awesome.
That would be awesome. So would you suggest then just some ideas? Is the office snack bar, is that like, we're not talking about something like that. We're talking about maybe like, I don't know. Listen, if at my workplace, if there was a Pac-Man machine, I would be so excited to take a Pac-Man break.
Right. Well, and that's exactly what it is. So it's really promoting, giving people opportunities within the space to play. It doesn't always have to look like playing a game, but reminding people, hey, you seem a little stressed, why don't you go for a walk? Or sitting down with somebody and having a conversation, asking about their family, finding out more about somebody, storytelling. There's a couple things that I love about meetings. Most people dread meetings. And you can start them off with a fun joke. You can have something like a tradition or a ritual where that you start every meeting, it passes around where somebody knows they have a meeting coming up, and each time a new employee has to bring in a joke to the meeting, whether it's funny or not. Obviously there has to be some appropriateness to it. Whether it's funny or not, the mood is going to be lightened. I like this idea of wrong answers only. So if you're trying to come up with something creative or solve a problem, you tell everybody wrong answers only. Come up with as many answers as you possibly can, wrong answers only.
Are going to be wrong.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's just a fun, creative way that actually is priming your brain to think creatively in the end. And so you could actually end up coming up with a better, real, right answer later on, but it's just a fun way to start off a meeting.
And the pressure's off. If you're just giving all of the wrong answers, right, then eventually it would make sense maybe something is going to come out that sounds good.
Well, it's rooted in psychological safety, and that's what that is. It's the more relaxed and safe we could feel, the better ideas that we're going to have, and the more effective we're going to be, ultimately in the end.
So you're studying organizational psychology and leadership, right?
Yeah.
So what you are learning, do they teach any of this in business school? Because it sounds like this might be something that would benefit people who are going to be CEOs. Or would you just study your program to become a CEO? Like how does that work?
That's a good question. I think some business schools do. You know, one of my favorite organizational psychologists works out of Wharton, Dr. Adam Grant, who's written a bunch of great books. If you haven't read Think Again or some of his other books, they're incredible. And so it just depends on the school. I think a lot of them offer courses on leadership or organizational psychology, and some are focused more on systems and building out nice flowcharts.
So what was it like for you to actually get the acceptance for the TEDx talk? Because I put in applications too, and I just stopped because I was doing the same thing as you. I was thinking about what I think they would want versus talking about what I really want to talk about. So I'm going to like refresh my applications and go from that perspective.
You should.
But how did you feel
when I got accepted?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Every emotion. So the weirdest part of me was wanting to just say, okay, I'm glad I got accepted. No thanks.
No,
you know, there was a part of me that was like, I want to run now. I have this great screenshot of me and two other people who got accepted that are friends, and we all applied for the same one. And it's this great screenshot of us all FaceTiming, and we're all just have these giant smiles on our faces. But then reality sets in of, oh, I got to get to work now.
How hard was it for you to actually craft the speech?
I might be the wrong person to ask because I kind of I'm like sadistic. And I kind of enjoyed the process.
Yeah.
But it was frustrating at times for sure because I know there's a strict 10-minute time limit for this specific TEDx event. I write this whole what I thought was a great speech, and I go to record it for myself. And it's 24 minutes long.
Oh, wow.
And I'm going, I am 14 minutes over.
What the heck are you going to cut?
Right.
Because it all seems important.
I had already cut at this point. So I'm like, what the hell am I supposed to do? So thankfully, I had a really good coach. Honestly, my favorite part of the whole TEDx process was working with the other speakers.
That's what I was thinking. It would probably be really cool to be in that together, right?
It feels like a solo sport. You know, like you're up there on stage by yourself, but it didn't actually feel that way. You know, there was multiple times a week we were on Zooms with each other, reading our talks to each other, making edits for each other, practicing. Honestly, from the moment I got accepted, which I think was the end of November, I want to say, of last year, till the end of March was when the talk was. It was just full go, practicing every single day, a few times a day. I even bought a red circle rug to stand on while I'm practicing.
What a great, just to be able to visualize and to get you in that mindset.
Exactly. Also to help me, because I'm a pacer when I talk. You know, if you ever see me on stage, public speak, I'm using the whole stage. So I had to learn to train myself to stay within a circle. But yeah, I mean, it was just constant practice. Honestly, everything but the day of feels great to me. The day of feels like a traumatic event to me. Although I think it came out well. Thankfully, we practiced so much that like muscle memory took over. There's pictures of me on the day of, and I am smiling ear to ear while giving my talk. And I know in that moment, I was just trying not to pass out, trying to remember my lines. So it was like someone else took over. So it feels negative for me when I think about it, but overall the experience was super positive.
So would you do it again?
I would. I'm not going to do it again while I'm in school. That is for sure. That was a mistake. But because it took so much of my attention away.
So was it, did you have a special coaching group, or did they put you together with all of the other speakers for that event and you guys practiced together?
No, we came together as a group. And we made that decision. But I hired an individual coach as well, who's experienced with the TEDx world and helped me a lot with forming things. And what I never thought about was helping me with intonation. So the words and how I say certain words and where I pause. The pausing was the biggest part that I was struggling with because I'm a fast talker.
Right, and I'm sure if you're anxious too, obviously you're trying to get it all out. Yeah.
Yeah, so remembering to pause for dramatic purposes, that was really important for me. But I will say the process also helped me become a better speaker. I use and like less now, and I can make eye contact with the crowd, and I know how to engage them. So it was a really transformative process in that way. And it's not like my talk went to millions of views or anything, but I'm so proud of it and have it. I think it's at like 12,000 views or something right now. And I'm happy with that. And I'm happy. And my hope is that it can help people change the way they view work and recognize that this idea of professionalism that we have can be challenged, and we are adults and we can design whatever world that we want.
So if you were to give employees and management one particular piece of advice to start the change process right now, what would you tell employees?
I would tell employees that they don't have to be in a position of power to make a difference, that they can make a difference in their cultures just by changing their own behavior and being brave enough to step forward and to bring joy into their workplaces. And if they do, it's contagious and it will start to spread. You can be a change maker without being a leader.
It's so interesting that you say that, because I think, for example, like when I go to Publix or when I go to Target, there's always one particular cashier or one particular worker that everybody gravitates to. And there's this one woman that I love because she always says to me, "Hi, honey, how you doing? I haven't seen you for a while. How are your kids?" And I'm like, I love you.
There's a woman named Pam. How many Publix cashiers do you know by name?
Right.
Like there's a woman named Pam that just makes me so happy every time I go. And she's just a cashier. I mean, not just. I mean, any position is important. You can be impactful.
She's not the CEO, and look how impactful she is.
Right.
She's your front-facing person.
It's warmth.
Yeah.
If you can be warm, that's really what I'm talking about. Warm and caring about other people. I have this belief that anybody can do any job. I think we could all learn to do a job. It's people that make jobs difficult and organizations difficult and work difficult. If we can learn to care about people and be warm and step out of our comfort zone and embrace joy, we can make a huge difference. That's why I always say, celebrate the personality hire. If you have somebody at your job that may not be the best worker, but they bring joy to your workplace, celebrate that person. Hold on to that person and don't let them go. Study them and figure out how to replicate them.
And so I think that's great advice for the employees, and we can see the effect that it has. I'm always going on that woman's line. Always.
Oh, yeah, same.
Right.
And it's always the longest line.
Right, of course. Yeah. So, and what advice would you give to managers or to company CEOs right now? Anything that they could do to start right now?
I'm going to look right at the camera. Stop taking yourself too damn seriously.
There it is.
You're not that important. You can make a huge impact if you just stop taking yourself too seriously.
I love that. I love that. So where can everybody reach you? Now you're in school right now. You're really busy. Are you still doing coaching right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where can everyone reach you? What kind of things are you doing?
Yeah. So the coaching is limited. The consulting is limited to a certain number of spaces. But if you want to have me come out, the main thing I'm doing right now is workshops and speaking at events and corporate trainings. So if you want to find me, you go to blakeevancohen.com or you can go to themindcapital.com.
And what kind of people are you working with, like coaching? Is it executive or is it?
Mostly executive. So it's mostly executive coaching and leadership coaching.
And leadership coaching.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or if you're interested in, if you are somebody who is looking to advance in their career or looking for a sense of purpose in their career, I'm more than happy to help you do that.
And when do you finish your degree?
2 years.
2 years. So what's after that? Or you're not even thinking that far ahead?
I don't know yet. Maybe it is the corporate clowning thing that we talked about in the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely.
I might become a full-time corporate clown.
I love that. Well, we're going to be watching to see what happens because, we've had some great conversations about this. I think the impact that, again, something so simple can bring to other people.
Yeah.
Why? It's sometimes the simplest ideas that have the most impact.
Oh my God. I say this all the time. It's like we need to just stop overthinking and looking for this big silver bullet, or is it silver bullet? Looking for this big silver bullet. It's just the little things that we do that add up and make a huge difference. Stop expecting that you can just have one event and everybody's all of a sudden going to be happy. It's the little things that we do every single day, the micro behaviors that make all the difference.
And maybe get out of your head a little bit and ask somebody else how they're doing. Right?
Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I love it. I
agree.
Thank you so much, Blake Cohen. I really appreciate it. This was a great conversation.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, everybody else. And don't forget to tune in to the next episode of From Mayhem to Mindset with Dr. Laura. Peace out. Thanks for joining us on From Mayhem to Mindset. If you found today's episode helpful, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and leave a 5-star review. It really helps spread the message. Want to dive deeper? Check out my book, Wisdom from the Universe, available now on Amazon. And if you're looking for a speaker to inspire and transform, I'd love to connect. Visit www.lauraellick.com to learn more. Remember, you don't have to just survive, you can thrive. See you next time.